Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Roberts as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Roberts, CEO of Collaborative Compositions. And today I've got with us Derek Hoyt, CEO of GovSignals AI. Derek, who are you and what do you do?
Hi, Chelsea. Thanks for having me on the show. So for me, in a nutshell, like you mentioned, Derek Hoyt, CEO of GovSignals, and we are building an AI acquisition platform that is end-to-end for both government agencies, so supporting both DoD elements there all the way through to government contractors themselves, automating the entire process end-to-end.
Very cool. I think AI is a very big buzzword right now, and everybody's scrambling to figure out how they can leverage it, what they should be using it for. But there's also that dark side that I've seen so many LinkedIn posts lately. We're using this for the wrong reason. We're leveraging this to create our formal arguments, or we're putting in bid protests, and it's turning out poorly for some of those folks that I think over leveraging it for things and not including the human in the loop. So I'm excited to talk to you today about what GovSignal is, what the difference is, and how that's making a difference for government contractors and government alike. So let's start there. What is GovSignals?
Yeah, so basically GovSignals, what we're doing is we are automating the acquisition process. So what we've realized was acquisition is really a series of linear sequences. And so what we can do we control and manage the data assets in the handoff. We can automate this with AI. And if done, we accelerate the process and we actually, in our opinion, make America stronger. A strong procurement system means we're getting the right goods to the right people at the right time. And that is a critical component for managing an effective economy and also supporting all of the government agencies and departments throughout the United States, both at federal and the SLED markets.
Interesting. And I absolutely would agree there. Having a strong procurement system is probably one of the biggest gripes that we've seen coming out of government specifically, and realizing that they're not getting what they need fast enough and they're putting it on industry, making it incumbent on industry to work within their processes, which might not be the most straightforward. They might not be the most direct and clear cut even. So where does GovSignals play in the market? Is it an industry tool? Are you providing that to government as well?
Yeah, I can provide some overview. So we support both personas, I guess you could say. So for instance, we had the DIU, so Defense Innovation Unit award to bring out the enterprise workflow and reporting platform. So that is to help them on their end automate and run their CSO process and really get around those workflows for how do you get high quality solicitations, conduct market research, and run the down select process. And so that's on the government agency side. So, right, that's like an IL5 environment. We need to have all the conditions and certifications there set aside. So that's to help government agencies. But then on the government contractor side, what we realized was, okay, we need to also support the other side in that we need them to, once they find a relevant bidding opportunity with our AI systems, how do they then write a compliant proposal response? But then really more even just in the writing aspect, it's how do you manage the life cycle of a business development engine for a large enterprise, right? So there's a lot of coordination. There's different personas. You have to have traceability. And these are like just fundamental core technology solutions that need to be delivered because most people still are using Excel, Outlook, and Teams in order to run multi-million-dollar acquisitions. And so for us, we were like, it's time to upgrade the stack, basically, for business development as well.
And it's really challenging to get through and cut through the noise that I think has jumped out and started to populate the industry in that regard. There's a bajillion different tools these days, and I think everybody says that they do all of it really well, but in the reality of it is that they do a part of it pretty well. And it's building that holistic stack of multiple tools that you can leverage that then you've got to manage that entire process. And it still comes down to the people that are managing it and putting it into a way that they can effectively navigate and that they can essentially delegate the roles out and the assignments out. So I'm curious that what does that look like with GovSignals when you're trying to work through that process, and how is it different than other companies?
That's a great question, Chelsea. So when you think about it, there's a lot of companies out there, especially now, as you mentioned, like the noise, and a lot of them are like ChatGPT wrappers, right? So they're just
Yeah.
quick little MVPs, and they're really just point solutions towards a specific problem set. And they're trying to be expansive and stuff. That's fine, and that might work for some folks, and that's okay. But our focus is, look, if you want to take your government contracting company from say $300 million a year to $600 million a year in annual revenue, you need a proper system that can integrate your data, is compliant, like that's hence why moving to FedRAMP High is absolutely essential to handle CUI data. And then also being able to work across various data stores at your company and bring them into a unified environment. And that's even before you touch AI. That's just like standard core technology requirements. And that right out of the gate, we've already done that at GovSignals. So like we've established that foundation. And so we can handle enterprise level data, which that right there is a huge differentiator already from just standard ChatGPT wrappers. And then we start and do very deliberate AI workflows. AI is a complement, it's an enabler. It's not the sole concept, right? So these are human driven processes that AI is then accelerating components that are very repeatable processes. So when you combine all this together, then with a first class implementation team, the teams that have built this and have lived in GovCon before, you really accelerate this entire process. And that's why, honestly, we're growing so quickly and people are very excited with our platform when we start to really roll this out across companies.
Now, you mentioned it's still a human driven process, which I think is key and core in that you have to have the human in the loop. If you don't, you're going to end up in some hallucinatory jailbreak situation where you found that you're getting your hand slapped for you saying something that you were so confident in and realizing, okay, maybe I didn't do the checks and balances on this and I didn't click through to the links that it's providing me to make sure that they're accurate and that it's a legitimate answer. So with that, do you have to have the process already in place that is really flowing like fairly smoothly? You're using all of your tools, your Outlook, your Teams, your SharePoints, and then this is just going to bring it all together and streamline it? Or can this help you get your process shop in order for doing some of this stuff?
Yeah, we see an interesting balance. So for folks that have a process already established, this is like in a Ferrari. Like they just jump in and they go, and they're very fast. We give them some guidance in regards and some training, right? On okay, how do you drive the sports car now? But they generally already understand the rules of the road and how to maneuver the vehicle. And then for some folks, we've found some clients that might not have necessarily the mature process. They actually might only start with one or two of our modules. And then we've encouraged them. We're like, no, crawl, walk, run as you adopt a system like this, because it's more than just technology, right? What we're talking about here is using systems to organize humans in a way that allows us to share context across the organization so we can deliver high quality proposal responses or answer those questions from government agency reps or finding them via conversations, et cetera, with our intelligence module. So very much it depends on where you're at in your GovCon journey, and we tailor the platform accordingly.
Okay. Okay. So if I have a desire to replace the sam.govs that I've got my existing staff working to sift through and sort through and find opportunities on, you can provide something that's just like solely focused on that aspect of it. And then if I decide that I want to have a little bit more involvement and a little bit more engagement, you've got like a proposal module, I'm guessing. And then
Yes.
you mentioned, I think earlier on, some actual contract management function that you've got incorporated into that as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, like what is a proposal? We look at it as we see it's a project. There's a defined start and a defined stop. What is a capture process, right? It's another type of project. So capture can start very much at the tip of the spear when you're just having a conversation with government PMs. all the way to, okay, now you have a go, no go. So what we realized was each of these are projects. And so for us, it's okay, government post-award execution and management, it's another type of project. And so that's exactly what we're doing with the EWARP project with the Defense Innovation Unit. So it's after they win or down select their final person or group of teams or vendors, what do we do with them? We need to manage invoices. We need to track payment processes and flows. We need the contracts in order and running workflows on there to generate the contracts and things like that. So contract management, post-award management is really just a form of managing another type of project. And we're able to do that with those related workflows inside our system.
Interesting, interesting. Just an example to work through in my own brain here. Say you've won your contract and now you've got to go into the PIEE, the WAWF system, and you've got to get invoices submitted on some regular frequency. Does this help me get those invoices submitted? Does it interface with WAWF in like itself, or does it just pop out the invoice and say, here you go, submit it? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've been working with DIU, and that's on a follow-on is to get direct connections with PIE and things like that, and WDF. That's hard. That's a whole nother process. So for getting access and permissions. But while we're working on that's like the long-term game. The short-term game is actually as simple as auto-generating for AWF. Which cleanse do you need to click on? Which buttons and what's that workflow? I countless times like trying to run through the system for invoicing. You click the wrong one, you submit the wrong codes, and now you've gummed up your invoice delivery for a month, and you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah,
So
I've been there. It's
okay,
painful.
exactly. Yes. So what we did, we're like, we could just make this simpler for the vendor and just a little cheat sheet. And like you submitted the milestone, you submit your artifacts to the government, they approve, and it just gives you a little quick cut sheet. Click this button, select this one, make sure this code's there because we have the contract with the routing
Right.
tables, and then we know what your cleanses are, and you just go step by step through. And that ironically, people have been really excited about, even just something as simple as that.
Yeah, I would be. I already am. I have sat through personally the double checking and being the second/third set of eyes on just even getting the process within PIEE and WAWF into a position to actually submit. And it's still something goes wrong. There's a slightly wrong character, or the CLIN was just slightly off, or you mistyped your justification for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's just like that, depending on your customer, it can delay
Mhm.
you like month to month to month. And during a shutdown right now, that's critical. That could be the difference
Mhm.
between you being able to pay people and not being able to pay people, is if you got your invoice submitted before the shutdown kicked off and being able to hold the government to some payment terms that you've got in your contract. So I think that's huge. And even just something as simple as having that, okay, here's how you do it. Here's like what you need to do. Here's the buttons to click. Just make sure that you get this right. Like this one's important, asterisk, asterisk, right?
Yes.
It's hilarious to me, the fact that the government makes it, and it's not easy on their side either. So I'm assuming that a tool like this would be, and when it gets direct connect, there's going to be that much more like level of support and excitement about being able to implement and utilize that across the board. Now you said you put your contract, like is it just like an upload your contract and then it reviews it all and goes through and checks it, or does it track pretty seamlessly from having your proposal, your opportunity pipeline into, okay, we won the award and then here's the award, and like what's
Mhm.
that look like?
Yeah, what we've been doing for the actual post-award contract management and some exciting things that we have that we're getting ready to actually release here pretty soon to production is the ability from a contractor standpoint is I have my contract, I have my statement of work. Why can't I have the system snap my baseline for me and help me and think through, okay, how do I build out my projects, my correlated milestones? How can I start tracking execution? And so there's a lot of this data that's just sitting at rest, including if you use like Microsoft Project or something, right? I have yet to meet someone that truly enjoys Microsoft Project.
Some sickos out there. I
Oh, you
know some
do?
real sickos
Okay.
out there that are super into it and they just get it. Like they're special breed though. They're a very
They're
special
special
breed.
breed?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I would love to meet them. Be like, please enlighten me. I love this. Yeah, because what I find fascinating, right? I'll use Microsoft Project as a quick example, right? So in a disconnected, isolated workflow, it works. But when you try to do it at scale and do synchronized project updates with nested projects at scale across, say, a 200-person team, then it becomes incredibly convoluted. And the systems are not designed to scale that way. And so what we're realizing is, wait a minute, we can set a really interesting foundation here because the data's here. We're already operating with CUI data. We can handle all that. So we can handle project execution and things like that in the cloud. And so it's a matter of, okay, let's establish workflows with AI to accelerate this process and doing that tracking and those type of portions. So when you really take a step back and realize like what we're doing here at GovSignals, when we truly say end to end, we're really talking through the entire process, that life cycle of a government contract, from truly the signal chain, from a government idea and a requirement and maybe in the field, all the way through the procurement process, all the way to actually then delivering that product. And so that is what we're building out across the stack. Because what we're doing, we're realizing we're collapsing the timelines across. I'll give you a tactical example. We'll start through the gates. So like from intelligence, our intelligence module, being able to find the right contacts and people to go and like actually have a discussion with. Sometimes that would take, what we were seeing is, I don't know, some folks were telling us it was like 8 to 10 hours of just manual research and background checks and getting stuff coordinated, like before they would go into a meeting and stuff like that. And now it's near real time and they have it and we mobile optimized it. So sales folks and folk can just walk right in basically. And if they're in the Uber, they can just do the quick write-ups now and have the system give the information around agency needs, priorities, pain points, and stuff like that. And with Capture, what used to take literally 40 plus hours a week and a full-time person just sifting through 15, 20, 30 different portals and things like that, let alone SLED, because we bring SLED in. That's like an infinite curve. You're talking 100,000 plus sites.
Yeah.
And now we've automated it. And so we have an automated agent and reasoning agents that come in and they give folks a highly curated list that is not keyword based anymore, and which is incredibly exciting. It's not keyword, it's semantic based. It's based on what is this reasoning agent telling you as to why this bidding opportunity is good for your company and how it meets your criteria and your capabilities. And so that took something that was full-time employees down to now folks tell us they love it. They come into the system, drink their morning cup of coffee, peruse through 30 minutes, condensed hundreds of thousands of procurements, and they have a nice curated feed. And they ship it off to their capture teams to start diving in as a tactical.
Yeah.
I can keep running through like each of the gates as we go through
Yeah.
from like proposals taking 2 weeks. Now it's down to like between first cuts, 30 to 45 minutes. And as you realize what it made sense why this acquisitions would take 18 months end to end and getting stuff through because of all of these manual processes. And we're just collapsing all these gates. And as we keep doing that, procurements are getting faster. And so it's a pretty exciting journey as we've been doing this since we started the company in 2023. And we have just been on a tear building this up, incredibly proud of the team. And so we've just been consistently growing both in technical prowess, but then also solving a lot of these unique workflows because of how we built our system. We have a lot of flexibility.
Now, I know on the government side, there's a lot of data silos. There's a lot of data that has been resigned to a specific system, and there's reasons for it. I get it. You've got a GSA contract. You don't want to open all the GSA opportunities to everybody else who doesn't have a GSA contract. But the reality is that there's how many GSA opportunities that have been issued, that have been awarded, that are going to come up for recompete, that companies want to be able to do some capture digging on some of those things that they might not have access to. They might not see a reason to get a GSA schedule until they see the vast number of GSA opportunities or the lack of GSA opportunities that might be there for them. Same with Seaport or Symphony or any number of individualized procurement sites that you've got to be a contract holder, a prime contract holder to be able to access. How are you addressing those sort of situations and conundrums from the contractor perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first thing what we do is if you do have an IDIQ, if you are on those vehicles, you can bring all of them into GovSignals and we will actually stream in all the task orders for you. And so it can actually scan through all that on your behalf. So that's the first thing we do if you're a contract holder. The other thing, though, that we recommend, if you're not a contract holder, is we really definitely recommend that this is why partnering is such a critical component in the industry. And so we have in our system the ability for you to scan through and look at various companies and things like that in the system. We're starting to continue to flesh out, even making even more nuance, because we bring in, of course, all the FPDS award data and other things like this. And so you can start to do overlays and see who should you start to have conversations with. But we definitely recommend building out your partner network for your various capabilities. Because once you have a partner in there, then you can share those task orders and you get access to the system via the partner network. There are questions and things like that some folks have asked in regards to like inside our platform. So interesting feature requests of being able to share inside once, like if there are a partner, being able to automatically share the data inside the system. And these are things that we're exploring. And so trying to, there's this balance of making sure we meet compliance because we're very big on compliance, but then also meeting the intent and spirit as it relates to partnering and things like that. What does that look like? And instead of exchanging data via email in an unsecured manner, just sharing data legally within a controlled, confined environment. Things like that's what we're exploring.
Sure. I've noticed, and it's probably a common problem, but I feel like I experience it oftentimes more frequently than the next average capture manager. Yeah, I've gotten a sense of something going to come out and it was previously on a GSA schedule, but in order to find any data about it, the award's probably on FPDS, like it's out there, but the information on it is really limited. It's not providing me with the previous solicitation. It's not providing me with the sort of historical context that would really benefit me in that time frame of getting to know, okay, what was previously done, what was previously solicited on this opportunity. So I can go through and dig through and figure out, okay, what's going to likely come out this next round. Do you have that historical information? Do you provide that historical information?
We do. So the way we look at it, so is this concept of semantic searching and reasoning. So it's more than just keyword searching. So keywords, you're going to get a lot of false positives. You're just going to get a bunch of noise that you have to sift through. So what we do on the back end is we actually do a lot of linking and a lot of data management. A lot of this at the end of the day, the AI is great. It's phenomenal. It accelerates a lot of repeatable processes. But at the end of the day, this is what I would consider the traditional data management problem. And so it's just at scale. So like with my background at Palantir, loved working there, great group of people, like that it was constantly explained, start with the data layer, understand the ontology, and then you can do pretty much anything on top of that data sets. That's exactly the framework that we have at GovSignals. So from our end, it's cool. Multiple different data types, not a problem. There's relationships inside, and we have different ways that we do enrichment of data and metadata management and stuff in order to do connectivity across all these data environments. And so that really creates a very robust search apparatus. And then we have the ability with like our AI assistant to take it even further and do like reasoning requests and multiple levels of like questioning and things like that to find the needle in the haystack insights. And so there's just some of the other things that we do with our clients. And what's really exciting, right, is cool, we have this publicly available data, but then our clients are also directly integrating SharePoint or like in the FedRAMP High environment, right, GCCI, SharePoints and stuff like that. And now you can take your internal proprietary data, enrich it with external publicly available data, and find net new insights that you just couldn't have before because there was no way to have that connectivity.
And you mentioned CUI a couple of times. Are you CMMC compliant then too?
I'm glad you bring that up. So there's a big confusion in the industry. So cloud-based providers, if you are working with an IT product or tool or solution, and they are in the cloud, they must be FedRAMP High certified or FedRAMP certified. And then there's moderate or high designators if the tool is in the cloud. If the tool is then on-prem and then you're willing to take the risk and you have to control your boundaries and things like that, and that vendor, the government contractor, has to be CMMC level 2 certified.
Okay.
So there's a huge difference in the market. So as GovSignals as a company, like for our employees, yes, we have a CMMC level 2 a component, and we can handle COI data at the company level. But CMMC level 2 for GovSignals does not mean that I can then handle CUI data in the cloud. You have to have FedRAMP high certification in order to handle COI data in the cloud. And that's exactly what we're moving to. We're full steam to get there, and we will be very soon. And we're excited to make formal announcements once they come out. But for us, there's a lot of confusion in the market, unfortunately. So a lot of, especially these newer tech companies coming in, they're saying, hey, we're CMMC level 2, go ahead. But all they've done is like an AWS GovCloud environment, et cetera. And they then just go through a certification process for internal controls. But that doesn't mean you're allowed to put your CUI data into that environment because it doesn't have all the controls that FedRAMP does for cloud-based environments. So it actually creates a security risk. And it's actually becoming a problem, what we're noticing in the industry right now, because there's like a whole new wave of technologists that don't understand the difference between CMMC for a company by itself and cloud-based providers that have to go through the FedRAMP certification process. So it's a big differentiation because it's a different suite of controls.
Right.
So FedRAMP is a much more rigid control system because you're in the cloud. And so instead of a local on-prem environment.
Interesting. Now, that's definitely a nuanced difference that I didn't think about necessarily. I just, okay, cloud stuff, FedRAMP, but everybody else, CMMC, and everybody else has to have that CMMC component. And it comes down to, at least in my mind, the CMMC side is mostly like the people side. And it's like the folks that you've got working within specific environments and that are going to be handling CUI, like that you have to have the processes, the practices, and the controls that the people are actually abiding by to be able to make their processes compliant from the holistic standpoint, not necessarily the environments in which that they're working, considering those to be compliant from a FedRAMP standpoint. So I think that's a huge important differentiation. Now, I know that everybody right now we're in the heat of a government shutdown. I have no idea. I have to say, hope and I'm optimistic it will be open and back open for business once this episode comes out. But for those that are trying to figure out how to navigate this shutdown, what advice are you giving to those folks and what are they leveraging GovSignals for?
Yeah, so we see in two parts basically. So part one is always continuing to build rapport and trust with your government clients. So there are still folks that are in accepted status, and so there are still folks there. I'm always an advocate for high empathy, support, and things like that. There's only so much you can do right now. And so it's more just being an enabler and helper, reach out, be very collaborative, and just being ready to understand the pain points that they're going to have once they reopen. Because let's say they open tomorrow, now there's this backlog because that now is being built. So now you're really talking another 6 weeks beyond that, just before you get back to business as normal. And now you go into the holidays. So really what we're talking about is probably February until they're truly operational again, if you really start to extrapolate out what's about to happen. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So when you think about it that sense, it's okay. Between now and let's say February, give or take, okay, building rapport, continuing your relationships and trying to stay because if you do that, then hopefully you're at the top of the priority stack in regards to what gets chosen in this massive backlog that's building right now. So that's first. And the second is, and this is what we've been advocating for pretty much all of 2024, which is diversification of revenue streams. So we are big proponents of SLED. So the combination of Fed plus SLED. So what we found too, especially in Q1, when a lot of the services contracts were being disrupted this year, what we found is actually a lot of folks were using our system to shift their services into SLED because they just didn't realize that there was opportunities available to them. And so because we aggregate SLED data throughout the United States, so then they were able to say, oh, wait, my services are applicable here and here as well. I didn't even know that. And I can start in my home state first and then go from there and expand out. And that kind of helps diversify revenue. So I'm always a proponent of that. And obviously it depends on what your services are.
Sure.
But a lot of folks, there's a big market in SLED. Like folks don't realize it's over $3 trillion of transactional contracts and things like that. Because you think about it, across the entire United States. So all the state and local transactions and contracts that are being done, it is a big market. And this is something that folks can tap into and start small, and you can always expand.
Now, I'm going to ask this. It's going to touch back on a couple of things we've already talked about, but it's just been bugging me in the back of my brain. I've used most of the tools, if not all of the tools at this point, and it goes back to everyone goes gold standard, Delta GovWin. And that's a incredibly expensive, incredibly high priced, high analyst time tool. And I think it really is ultimately based on the people behind it, not necessarily like the tech stack in front of it, from my perspective. And I think all of the tools that I've accessed and worked within and had the opportunity to take for test runs, they all have seemed to have a common problem of being able to consistently pinpoint opportunities that are related to a specific opportunity that you might be interested in. So whether that's a previous solicitation or a previous request, that it ultimately is the same. It's the first iteration of the thing that you're looking at now. And it just, the government, and no fault of their own, they are not very consistent with their naming structures or numbering structures. And so you've got a solicitation XYZ that is really well related to ABC, but because it's XYZ, it's not ever connected to that ABC. And you've got to go really dig and try. That's a very time consuming process to find that former, like previous life of an opportunity that's coming up or that's currently on the streets in terms of market research or solicitation. Does the semantic search help with that and being able to tie those things together?
Partially. You need two pieces, though, in order for it to be really effective. So again, coming back down, what you just described is a data management problem.
Yeah.
So what we do is on the back end is because we are bringing in all the metadata, the documents themselves and things like that, we have a fingerprint of this document. We understand what's in here now. And so when another document that is similar in nature comes along, because we have managed these two objects, when we then run the reasoning agent through, it can say, hey, yes, these are similar bundles. And so maybe you should look at these collectively. So that's one way that we do it. The other way too, which has been fascinating, is like you have the RFI go out, or maybe even just an initial RFI, or maybe even the forecast. Let's start there. So we bring in the forecast data as well from like agencies. It has a generic name, some high level concept, but then it goes through and it's okay, then how do you know, like when the RFI comes out, that it was paired properly? It's not like they always use the same title. And so for us, we're like, okay, this is actually not necessarily a pure AI problem in essence. It's like, how do we do correlation and understand that these are entities that are similar in nature and should be matched? And so that's actually a data management problem. So of course we use AI to help do enrichment and reasoning and thinking through, but to build that link, that's done on the back end. So we're doing that automatically because we're focused at the data pipeline and saying, hey, we have a degree of confidence. It's called entity resolution, right? These are similar in nature and they should be linked or associated. And so we are doing that daisy chaining on the back end pretty consistently. So we have a pretty cool system. Actually, we're about to release another system here soon called Monitors that takes this to the next level, and which we're really excited about because it's a data management problem. Making sure, are we doing linkages correctly? But then the semantic reasoning on top of that to say, yeah, you really should look at these two because looking at the two fingerprints, they're pretty close and similar in nature.
Interesting. Interesting. Now we're coming to the end of this. And last question here is, what are you most excited about for next steps for GovSignals?
Yeah, it's a great question. So at a personal level, what really gets me excited, especially as we're going into 2026, is as we continue to expand the compliance framework and the footwork that we've been doing, all this groundwork, being able to do some top tier offerings going into 2026 in regards to like certifications like FedRAMP and things like that, and IL5, and being able to do this at scale for our clients. So that's one big thing. But then the other thing too is we have some really exciting new feature sets. We are constantly building and improving the system. And so our head of product is really organized and working with our clients as well. We are coming out with a whole new suite of capabilities that we're very excited about. Just really, again, with the ethos. So I'll frame it this way. The vision I have is it should take 5 minutes for the government to issue a solicitation, and it should take 5 minutes for the community to respond and be awarded. That is my paradigm. Why can't it be a 10-minute transaction? And so other parts of the world do it, like in commercial side and business to consumer paradigms. They have figured out how to collapse that contract exchange. And so from our end, going into 2026, is how do we continue to collapse this down to make it truly a 10-minute transaction? So that's the mindset, ethos, and the infrastructure that we're laying over here at GovSignals.
I love that. Who doesn't want to wait 10 minutes? You mean 10 months? Yeah, no, 10 minutes. In an ideal world, that would just be amazing. This has been a fantastic conversation. How can folks get a hold of you if they want to know more about GovSignals? Should they reach out to you directly? Are you on LinkedIn? What's the best way?
Yep. So you can, a couple ways. So you can go to our website. So www.govsignals.ai. You can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. So Derek Hoyt on LinkedIn. And then I'm happy to hand off to you, Chelsea, as well, some of our company emails and things like that for folks so they can reach out direct as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. We'll get it in the show notes for folks that are interested and want to know more.
Excellent. Appreciate that.
This has been a fantastic conversation. I'm sure our audience will pick up a load of great information and a load of great tips, and hopefully you'll have a spike in website visits from this conversation alone. I really appreciate your time today, Derek. And for all the folks out there, don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with your friends so you can see next week's episode and get it in your feed. Appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, Derek. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Roberts. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.